Hey everyone, today I'd like to talk about PhotoGimp. PhotoGimp is a patch for GIMP, and in case you don't know what GIMP is an open source alternative to Photoshop, and it's really a fantastic program. GIMP is something that I started using after I converted over to Linux. However, GIMP is available for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS users. So on all the major platforms you can use GIMP, and it works like a charm. Now I have to admit, when I first crossed over to Linux, I was still a Photoshop user, and I used Photoshop for everything. It was my go-to app. However, when I went over to Linux, I could run Photoshop in the wine layer. However, I had to use an older version of Photoshop than what I was using, if I remember right. A little bit older, and it wasn't real comfortable. I didn't always get the best results with it, even though if you went back farther, it worked pretty good. This was back when Photoshop was, you could own it for a single fee, whereas now you got to pay a monthly fee for Photoshop. And really, in my opinion, I think anything you can do on Photoshop you can do in GIMP. And that's kind of my opinion, but it was really hard for me to cross over from Photoshop to GIMP. In fact, a couple of times I just said to heck with it and went back to Photoshop. But eventually I really wanted to have something native on Linux that I could use. And I gotta admit, when I first got into GIMP, it felt really awkward. It didn't feel, I was so used to Photoshop that was my comfort zone. So when I got into GIMP, I was outside the comfort zone, and it was uncomfortable. The tools weren't where I was expecting them to be, and the menus were different. And so to accomplish things that were just dead simple in Photoshop was a big pain in GIMP. And then, finally when I got to that point where I did cross over that threshold to where I was starting to understand GIMP better, I actually started to like it better, in fact. So yeah, once I got over that hump, then GIMP was really nice. But I can understand firsthand the perspective from coming from Photoshop to GIMP, and that initial apprehension and the difference in look and everything. So PhotoGimp solves that problem, I believe. This patch, and this is a patch is what they call it. So what you do is you install the patch here, and then it changes your existing install of GIMP to be tailored towards Photoshop. And I think it has some extra stuff in there too that are Photoshop-ish, like filters and fonts and all that good stuff. So that's really cool. And then of course GIMP has plugins available that allow you to have other features that the newest Photoshop would have. And for me, it would be everything I can do in Photoshop I can do in GIMP. Yeah, let's take a look at the page here. So here we have even a splash screen that's kind of Photoshop-ish here, with the girl kind of sucking in on the butterfly like, yeah, I tried that once. Gotta tell you, it didn't work out so well. I can see why she's blue and red. So yeah, I mean, cool splash screen. And then it even changes your icon if you wish. And here's some of the features. The patch for optimizing GIMP 2.10, which is the latest version of GIMP, by the way, for Adobe Photoshop users, including features like a tool to organize and mimic the position of Adobe Photoshop. And hundreds of new fonts by default. That's really cool. I mean, the fonts in Photoshop is something I always liked, having that selection. And so to see something like that here is really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to trying this out. And then we got new Python filters installed by default, such as the heel selection. Nice. New splash screen, which is probably the girl with the butterfly. And then new default settings to maximize space on the canvas. Nice. Shortcuts similar to the ones on Photoshop following Adobe's documentation. Then we have new icon and name for the custom desktop file. And the system language is now used by default, which can still be changed in the settings if you want. And here's a quick screenshot of what you would see when you're running GIMP. So that's really cool. And it also reiterates here again that you have a large set of fonts available anytime, more than 1,800 fonts included by default in PhotoGimp. So you can speed up your creative workflow. How cool is that? All right, real quick, I'm just going to open up GIMP here real quick so you can, those that aren't familiar with GIMP, you can kind of see it. So this is GIMP 2.10. And here we have the layout, and if you're a Photoshop user, you can see right off the bat that it's quite different. Your tools are up in here in your upper left, and then we have a different layout altogether, really. And here's your brushes over here on the right side, and then your alternative menu here, and your layers, which are formed here if you want to add new layers. And so yeah, everything is kind of different. And then here's your default filters that come with GIMP, and your tools, and all your different settings, your layer and image settings and so forth. And so yeah, I mean, it's kind of different, really, coming over. And for me, it was a bit uncomfortable. Now, this was 4 years ago, so, you know, back then it was probably like GIMP, who knows, you know, 1.89 or whatever, 2.0 maybe. So, I mean, even since then, GIMP has improved a lot. But still, you know, I mean, crossing over from Photoshop, it can be a little funky, and maybe even it could put you off a bit. And then if you didn't decide to explore GIMP further, you'll never know all the good stuff you would have missed out on. Now, one thing about installing this patch here, PhotoGimp, that if you want an auto install on this, it's really kind of intended for a flat pack install, so then this will just kind of auto install. However, you don't have to have a flat pack. Like, for example, I installed my GIMP just through the repositories here. I'm running Arch, so in the repository I just went ahead and installed it. Now, I could do a flat pack install if I wanted to with GIMP and then just kind of go the flat pack route. However, you don't have to. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go with their recommendation. All you really have to do actually is just copy some folders over, and it's really simple. I'm going to show you how simple that is right now, in fact. So first of all, what we'd want to do is we want to jump up here and download our file. Or if you like the command line, you can do a git clone here if you have git installed. I'm just going to go ahead and download the zip. So all you would have to do is hit here. And in fact, I already downloaded mine, so I don't need to click that again. And then once your zip file is downloaded, all you really have to do is open up your folder. And in Linux, what we would do is we would go into our home folder and then turn on our hidden files, which is Control H. Or you can just simply go into the menu and select Show Hidden Files. And then once you're inside here, you'll see all these different little folders here that start with a dot. In Linux, that means it's a hidden folder or file. So we want to go into our config file, and then inside our config, we want to find our GIMP folder, which is right here. And we'll just go inside there, and we got 2.1.0. So I'm just going to go inside there. In fact, I'll just double click on it. So now we're inside our .config /GIMP/2.10 folder. Now, if you're on Windows or in Mac, down here it gives you a little guide where you can go to. And all I'm going to do is extract a folder into this directory. So on Windows, it would be in your user/app data/GIMP/2.10. And if you installed GIMP in Mac OS than it would be in your home folder, library, application support, GIMP 2.10. So once you know where to go, and people tell me where to go all the time, we can proceed. So all we got to do is, now that we're in our 2.10 folder, the main stuff is located in this var folder inside our zip file. So if we just navigate inside var and then app and then org.gimp and then config, which is where we're at here, config, and then GIMP, and then 2.10, you can see it's matching our path here. And so if we go inside there, we can see all these different things, brushes, filters, fonts. So I'm just going to scroll down. I highlighted brushes, the first folder, and I'm going to go all the way down to the last folder, which is this guy. I'm going to press my shift key and then click to highlight this whole range. And then I'm just going to drag that into my GIMP 2.10 folder here. And then I'm going to hit apply to all and just override everything. And you can see it's adding a lot of stuff into the fonts folder there. Nice. Okay. Now, just on that alone, that will have patched my GIMP for PhotoGimp. So now let's take a look at GIMP again and see what's changed. So I'm going to go back up here, launch GIMP. Whoa, check that out. We got the splash screen, PhotoGimp. Wahoo! And now it looks like Photoshop. How cool is that? So now, here we have our tools over here laid out Photoshop style, and then color picker and all the good stuff, just like you would see in Photoshop. So if we want to open up a photo, and I'll see if I can find something to open here from one of my previous videos, like this guy here. Okay, here's my thumbnail, and I actually did this in Inkscape, but now we have it opened up in our PhotoGimp. And if we go up into our file menu, if I wanted to save this, we now have a Save for Web feature, which is actually one of the Photoshop plugins that's also available separately out there, but it's included here, which is really great. Typically in GIMP, if you want to save your work, once you save your photo, and let's say you manipulated it and added some stuff, then if you hit save, what it's going to do is it's just going to save an XCF file, which is a GIMP project file. And so to save like a JPEG or a PNG file or whatever, you got to go down to export as, which is different than in Photoshop. So that was one of the things that confused me in the beginning. I was like, ah. It didn't make sense. And it will auto-detect your format here too. So if you want to make that a JPG, you could simply change the extension there and it'll detect it for you automatically and export it. However, with the PhotoGimp patch on here, we can use the Save for Web instead. So we just hit Save for Web, and then we can choose our format here as a JPEG, a PNG 8 or 24, JPEG 2000, or a GIF file. Nice. So that makes it a lot more comfortable too. I think that's a really nice difference to add it in there. And of course we have our layers here, so you would just add your layers the same way you would in Photoshop. And check out the layering. So if we gave it a, let's just call it I don't know, some layer. I know, that's kind of lame. But, and then we just hit OK. And then we got our second layer here with a transparent background. And now that way, if I want to maybe put some text over it and just kind of come down here, then I got my text. And since we got a gazillion different new fonts to choose from, that really kind of is cool. So I'm just going to write something in here like some text. And here we got some kind of freaky Ajax surreal freak text. How cool. So now I got some cool text in here. And if I want to modify that, I can just hit our text thingy here again and just highlight it. And we can set our size here if we need to make it bigger. And then we got some text. And this is a little bit hard to see here, which I think is related to the theming on my desktop. But here you can select bold, italic, underline, and strike through. Nice. So yeah, very cool. And then of course here you can change your color of your font. So if you want it maybe red or some variation, there you go. And also of course if you want to change your fonts, just come over here and select fonts, and then we can just kind of scroll down and wow, we got the aardvark and abduction. How cool. Abode. So yeah, just tons of fonts. I mean, how cool is that? So now we got Adidas Sport. And let's make that all caps. Some text. Adidas. So now we got an Adidas style text here, and we could increase the size there real quick, make that kind of bigger. But first you got to highlight it, make it 48, and there we go. Nice. And again, let's make that a different color, like something bright, and move it over. Move our text where we want it. And then of course we got our filters over here, which are added in. One of them that they referred to on the website was the healing. So we got that here under our clone tool in the group, and our perspective clone. And then let's see what else we might have that looks different. Like, let's jump up here. We can select by color, scissors and foreground. Here we go. Unified transform, rotate, shear, flip, perspective, 3D transform, and handle transform. And then your warp transform, cage transform, gradient bucket, pencil, airbrush, ink, and eraser. You know, these are standard in the GIMP too, but the healing, definitely a Photoshop filter. And you got your paths, text, and measure. So yeah, very cool. And then of course your tool options, like for example, we click on the transform over here and hit tool options, and then you got your properties here for adjusting your hardness, strength, and spacing and all that for this particular filter. And whereas opposed to GIMP, which would have it over on this side in the lower right, or left, I mean. I don't know my right from my left. So yes, and your paintbrush settings all over here. And again, your fonts, and then your color settings. And of course, your menu is not going to be one-to-one because you got all your GIMP stuff in here too. So, well, that's to be expected, actually. There's a quick overview for you on the PhotoGimp patch for GIMP. So this is a nice, easy way to convert GIMP into a Photoshop-friendly environment to make the transition a lot easier. This is really nice. I think this is some great work that's been done by these people from DO Linux. I think that's how you pronounce it. So yes, wonderful patch. I think this is great, especially if you're somebody that's like maybe leaving Windows or Mac, coming over to Linux, and you want to have an alternative to Photoshop. Or maybe you're just tired of the monthly payments. Well, here you go. You have at it. No more excuses. So run out there and get GIMP and put on this patch. If you want that Photoshop experience, you have nothing to lose. It's free. And with that, I give it a double thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you like this video. And hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.